Okay, we are back with On the Mic, another episode here with Tony, man. I'm here with Miguel, and we have a very interesting, story today, man. And very eager to hear it and share it with you guys. And, like I said, I'm here with Miguel.
Hello, Tony. Thank you for having me on here.
Yes, sir. So, Miguel, man, I was really eager to have you on here, share your story a little bit. First things, man, tell us, how old are you?
I'm 24 and I turned 25 in July.
24 years old, man, young, and he has a really good story, man. So with that, let's start from the beginning, man. Where it all started. Take us back to, let's not too far back. Let's go back to 12, 13 years old, man.
Okay.
How was your life? How you remember it? At about around that age.
So, I grew up in a really divided household, so I rebelled a lot. I acted out. I was outcasted. Felt like I was outcasted from my family. So, around 12, 13 years old, when middle school hit, I really started acting out. I started cussing out teachers, walking out of class, skipping school, smoking, just doing things that a normal middle schooler wouldn't do.
Yeah.
Just because I wanted that acceptance, and
it's not even running with the wrong crowd, right? It was more just so yourself, or were you involved with the wrong crowd, or?
Yeah, I want to say it's a mixture of both.
A mixture of both.
For
you really
sure.
didn't need the crowd, it was just.
Yeah. Yeah. And so bad company corrupts good character. I remember my earliest memory of something crazy happened. I was 13 years old, I believe, at the time, and I was at a trap house. And I met my first MS-13 gang member, you know what I mean? And I was nervous.
At 13 years old.
13 years old, you know what I mean? Because I remember the guy who ran the trap house, he was asking me all these questions, you know what I mean? Like, oh, where does your mama stay? Where does your grandmama stay? Like, I ain't got a grandma, you know what I mean?
Personal information. Yeah.
I lied about everything, obviously, you know what I mean?
Man, that's really smart, though.
Yeah, for a 13-year-old, bro.
Smart that it clicked.
Yeah. And so,
okay.
So I really got sucked into that life, of hanging around just bad people in general. I never got clicked into a gang, even though, like, out of high school, I did do a lot of bad stuff with them, but I never got clicked in with them.
Never officially joined them. You were just basically affiliated, but not 100% joined.
And they asked me too, one of my homeboys, and we grew up together, you know what I mean? And he asked me, he's like, when are you gonna get clicked in? And I was like, man, I don't know, like, I really don't want to get jumped, you know what I mean? And second, I know that
it's just a whole different ball game, man. And once you get clicked in, it's a whole different life, because it's easy to get in, but it's not so hard to get out. Not too many people understand that when they join a gang. They don't really realize what they're really getting into. So luckily you didn't go that route. You were around it, but something was telling you.
For sure.
Was it like you knew what was good and bad, or you just like?
Yeah, no, I definitely knew what was good and bad, but I didn't care at the time, But I knew that was for life, because my homeboy, he already jumped off the porch, way before I ever did, what I mean? But if they were doing something, I was always with them, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so if they were breaking into houses, I was breaking in with them.
Yeah, no questions asked.
No questions asked,
That's crazy, man. So with that being said, you did you ever bring any of that home? Like, how was your household? What did your parents say? Did they see that? Did they try to correct you? Like, how was that? Because I know sometimes you can bring that home. All that.
For sure. So my mom, she obviously, it's not like she sat me down and be like, hey, what you're doing is not good. No, like, she'd come at me with a bat. You know what I mean? I didn't care, but I was at that age already where, what could she tell me?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And man, I stressed her out so much.
Well, words weren't doing it.
Nah, definitely
not. So she was just like I can't talk to you, so I have to try to use physical or yell. Yeah. You know, yelling instead of talking because words weren't doing it anymore.
Yeah. No,
that's
for sure.
Crazy. And you know, brothers, sisters, you know, how was that like?
Man, they didn't care.
They just were just watching it all happen, and everybody had their own thing going on.
My older brother was actually sort of in the same life. You know what I mean? I was probably worse than him, you know, but I did look up to him in a way, you know, because I seen that like people, he was respected. You know what I mean? Like like he could throw down. Like people know him for throwing down. You know, and so
you tried to beat that to impress him.
Yeah. But at the same time, it's like he wasn't impressed.
He wasn't impressed. I mean? I get that because he was just hardcore, you know. So it was not too much was gonna impress him, you know. But you didn't know that. You were just trying to impress him.
Yeah, you know, it's that acceptance that I wanted.
The acceptance, like for him to be like, yeah, that's my brother.
Yeah.
You know, and it is crazy you say that because it's very similar, you know, to what, you know, a lot of youngsters growing up, and you know, I don't really want to say the wrong neighborhoods, because if you do have, you know, maybe the right the right examples, you know, you don't have to go down there, or you can see what's going around you, but you don't follow it, you know what I'm saying? But so you know, so you're in the streets, you know, you're getting down with the wrong people, the wrong crowd, and was there any events that, you know, kind of like led you down to jail or stuff like that, you know?
Yeah.
So sometimes you do things that you really can't come back from, you know?
Yeah, for sure. So I was actually involved in a drive-by shooting, right? It was a group of us in the car, you know, and the video got out there. And I remember it was nowhere near where I lived, you know, but it's funny. It's a funny story, but at the same time, it's not. You know what I mean? So it was nowhere where we lived, but I remember whenever the video got out, because somebody that I knew posted it on Facebook.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And I was like, bro, why would you do that? That video blew up and went viral, you know, and people that I know were like, because we were wanted for like a day or two, you know what I mean? And I remember keeping up with it, and I was like, oh man, like, and I see people that I know commenting, oh, this is who's in the video, this and that, people that we were cool with.
Automatically,
I'm like, come on, man, like, there's not even a reward for it, you know what I mean? Like,
just pointing fingers.
Exactly. And so I remember I was sitting down on the couch with my mom, and the video popped up on the news.
Oh man.
And you could see us in the video, and I'm like, oh my God. And
your mom watching it.
Yes. And my heart went to my stomach. I'm like, dang.
I hope she don't recognize me.
Yeah. And so I immediately got up and went to my room, but she knew something.
Yeah.
She was like, let me find out that you know something about this. You know?
Mother's intuition.
Then the next day, and right early in the morning, doom, 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 my niece comes to my room and wakes me up. She's like, Miguel, like, the cops are here. Like, why are they looking for you? You know, this and that. And I'm like, dang.
You knew why.
Yeah, I knew why. You know, I went outside. You know, they took me in. You know, they interrogated me. Obviously, you got to play dumb. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
No charges were ever filed. You know, but
was it an eye opener?
It definitely was.
Was it like a turning point, or you still continued to be out there because, you know, you get to a point where you feel invincible. You know, you come out of it, and you know you really don't learn, and you keep going. No. Or was that actually like a little eye opener?
See, that wasn't the eye opener. The eye opener is whenever everybody started turning on each other.
Oh,
that was the eye opener. You know, and so whenever everyone separated, you know, I really had time to myself now, because I wasn't. We weren't chilling with nobody no more. It was like, man, like, you can't trust nobody, you know. Yeah. And so I was just in my room getting high, like, out of my mind, bro. And I really started reflecting. I was like, man, like, I've robbed people, I've broken their houses, you know, I've done such horrible things. Like, where am I going?
Yep.
Right? And this was out of a high mind. You know what I mean? And like, I was really thinking to myself, what am I doing with my life? And this was, I'm around about 20 years old, 21 years old now, you know, and I was like, bro, if I keep doing this, I'm either going to die or go to jail.
Yeah.
You know?
And I've been a firm believer on that. Like, you go your life living your life, right? And you know it's wrong, right? But but you don't, while you're doing it and living it, you don't think of the consequences. You don't think where you're going. You don't think what road you're headed and all that. You don't think. But there comes one day where everything just plays in your head and you're like, this isn't right. You know, I need to do better. I need to change. And so you had that realization, and it just goes to show you, man, out of all the people you were with, who you were around, and they were all gone.
Yeah.
And that's whenever you had the realization, like, by yourself.
Yeah. You know, because I always surrounded myself with them. I was with them 24/7. You know what I mean? And so having the time to myself and being high and really reflecting. And I remember when the exact moment hit me, it was like 2 or 3 in the morning. I was in my room, bro, and, you know, my room, it had like that, just like that ambient feeling towards it. You know what I mean? Like or is that the right word?
It was just cloudy.
It was cloudy. There's holes in the wall.
Dark.
You know what I mean? It was just...
even if the lights on, windows are open, it's still dark, right? It feels dark.
For sure.
Yeah.
And, and that story's alleged, by the way. All right, just throw it out there. And alleged.
Yeah, allegedly. You know, no files, no charges were filed or anything. You know, so.
And so, I had my first panic attack because I thought about, man, how much people have I hurt? What am I doing with my life? You know what I mean? Like, bro, like tomorrow ain't promised. You know, so I started developing this anxiety and this depression because I'm thinking like, man, what if one of the people I've hurt is going to come back and try to get me?
Yeah.
You know? And so, man, I had my first panic attack. I'll never forget that, man. And
that or like, you know, you don't really think of your actions, what they can do to another person's mental.
Yeah. Oh boy.
You know what I'm saying?
And I actually have a story for that.
Yeah, and you know that, and it's crazy, you know, because it's like I want to say so much, but you know, it's not my time, you know. It's your story, but I can relate. Like, that's what I'm saying. I can relate, and we can go on for days, bro, because I can relate. So it's when I hear you say that, you know, it's so hard not to say something or butt in because you can relate. And when you have that understanding of things you've done and you don't realize what you do to other people, like your actions have reactions to other people.
And it's crazy that you say that. So, someone that I robbed, I didn't even know he lived down the street from me until, like, I want to say maybe a year ago, you know? And, so before I tell that story, I want to tell the story of like what is like my transition to living that type of life to being
to
a
where
Christian.
you're at now. Yeah.
And so it really came from, you know, that depression and anxiety that was crippling, man. You know, and now I have a guilty conscience.
For sure.
You know what I mean? Because the transition from all I care about is drinking, smoking, partying, women, you know, getting money, doing coke. You know what I mean? All that to actually caring about what I'm doing, that's like night and day
difference.
You know what I mean?
And it comes with a lot of power and like focus. You have to be focused to live this life, bro. You know,
for sure. And you know, I had a job that I hated. You know what I mean? And so I was depressed, bro. You know, and I started changing little by little, you know, just not doing anything crazy, you know what I mean? Just living the same life, still getting high and stuff, going clubbing, but not gang affiliated, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so I meet this girl, and it's cool and all, but the relationship moved way too fast. And I noticed I'm having these crazy thoughts. Right, like thoughts of harming her, harming myself, my family, you know, and I'm like, bro, like, this is crazy. Like, there's no way. Like, what am I thinking about? Like, we couldn't even sleep in the room if there was, like, a butter knife there, because I would have, like, thoughts of, like, you know, stabbing her to death and, you know what I mean? Like, some crazy stuff, bro. Yeah. And little did I know that, bro, that was a demon, bro.
And that was during you wanting to transition to a better person.
Yes.
Okay, so, yeah, you know what they say, man.
Yeah.
It comes to get you stronger than ever when it knows it's losing you. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
That's crazy.
And for the sake of time, I'll skip a big part, but it's whenever I gave my life to Christ, you know what I mean? Like, truly, when I found Jesus, you know, that's what really helped me, you know, and those thoughts, as soon as I got baptized, vanished. Like, because if you hang around demons, you're going to become a demon. You are a demon if you're going to be around demons, right?
For sure, yeah.
You know, and so people don't understand that the spiritual realm is as real as the physical, you know. And going back to that story I told you that it was crazy. So the guy that actually robbed, I seen him pass by my street, and this was a couple months ago. Actually, it was a couple months ago. And I wanted to approach him, and I wanted to be like, hey, like, you know, I'm sorry. Yeah, you know.
Take it back.
And he never walks down that street, you know what I mean, where I live. But I remember whenever he did, I was like, man, like,
should I? Yeah.
And so I told God, I was like, God, if you let him walk down this street, I'll apologize. I'll talk to him. And so I think like the next week or 2 weeks later, I see him walking by again, and I'm with my ex. And so I go up to him, I'm like, hey, bro, you know, he starts clutching because he knows who I am.
Yeah.
And I'm
he
like,
recognize you.
I was like, I'm either going to die or I'm going to apologize. You know, I was like, I'm fine for both. You know, I mean, I know where I'm going, you know what I mean? And so I approached him, and he automatically starts clutching. He was like, oh, what's up? You know what I mean? And I was like, hey, a couple years ago, you know, I took some things from you. I didn't say robbed, you know what I mean? I said, I took some things from you. You know, I just want to apologize and, you know, say I found God. You know, like, I'm not the same person. You know, but before I said that part, he was like, oh, excuse my language, but he said, oh, shit, man, sorry, I do the same thing. You know, and I'm thinking, like, dang, did what I did to him, now he's doing that to others? Is that the reason why? You know?
No, I think that he, because I have a mentality that as well, you know, and I haven't got on here and told my story, which I really want to do too, you know, but I feel like hearing you and hearing him is, and like I said, I understand both sides, but I think what he said was, I do it too, to where he's like, the one thing that I always told myself and was like, when something happened to me, I would always say, dang, the game, it's the game.
Yeah.
It's just, that's the way it is. So you can't really get mad at that. You see what I'm saying? So if he was doing it, that's why he wasn't mad at you for doing it. That's just, it was his time. See what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So if he's doing it, you know, eventually the game is going to come back to you.
For sure.
So if he was really about it, so he understood it. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
That's why I you know, there's some situations where people are like, man, how can you let that person slide? How can you let that person go? Well, it's because I'm like, okay, how can I go do that to that person when I'm doing the same thing over here?
Yeah.
I can't be mad at him. I can't be mad at the game. That's the game we play. If you play, expect to get it in return. You know what I'm saying? So that's where I think he was telling you, like, hey, don't worry about it. I understand.
That's a good point.
You know what I'm saying? I understand.
For sure.
I get it. It was my turn. You just got me. I get people. Eventually, somebody's gonna get me. You were the one that got me. See what I'm saying?
And that's a good point.
Yeah.
I didn't even think about it like that.
That's the way I think, because that's, you know, there's situations that I went through, happened to me and all of that, where I could just laugh at it. Like, damn, they got me.
Yeah.
And you laugh at it because you're like, oh, okay, well, you know what? I'm not going to drop my guard next time. I already know. You see what I'm saying?
No, for sure. That's an amazing point. I didn't even think about it like that, bro.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
But you're lucky you ran into a guy that thinks like that, though.
Yeah.
Because if you ran into a guy that held that anger, animosity, you know,
I would have got blasted, boy.
It would have went.
Yeah, no, for sure.
Know? But he understood. He understood the rules of the game.
Yeah.
You know.
But like I said, either way, you know, if I went in prepared. You know what I mean? If I was to die, okay, amen. Yeah. Lord forgive him. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But yeah, so I just thought that was interesting, you know. And so I told him, you know, I found Jesus, and you know, I was like, man, what do you think about Jesus? I was trying to preach the gospel to him. He was like, oh, man, I go to church here and there, and you know, I was like, you should come to my church, bro. You know, I was really trying to plant that seed in him, you know. And it's crazy because a lot of people here, they just think I'm a good old Christian boy, you know. But there's a lot that led me to this point.
Yeah, for sure, you know? Man. Yeah, for sure. And that's what a lot of people won't understand if they haven't walked your shoes.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So it's gonna, you know, if you can reach one person, I think you did your job.
Oh, for sure.
You know what I'm saying?
For sure.
Yeah, because it's, you know, it's really hard to get an understanding person in front of you. You know, everybody's judgmental. So if you can reach one person, I think you should be happy with yourself.
For sure. You know, the Bible says when one sinner repents, heaven rejoices.
Exactly.
You know.
Yeah. So, you know, and that's one of the reasons why I wanted you to come on here is like, you know, now you joined your church, you're more involved, and how's your life after that, man?
Boy, man, I can't lie. Like, giving my life to Christ, bro, it was. So when I share my testimony, I say this: I made tons of bad decisions in my life, but the only good decision I made was giving my life to Christ. You know, whenever I started my walk with God, you know, I was very lukewarm. I still didn't have that community. You know, I was still backsliding. I would preach to a coworker, but then after work, we'd go grab a beer, go to the club. You know what I mean? And so it took me about a year to finally not get it right, but understand, okay, I'm still lukewarm. You know, it took a community because you can only go so far by yourself on the walk with God.
Oh, yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yes.
And so finding that community, you know, discovering what was God's purpose for my life, that's when, you know, when it was just like wow, God, like, because if I'm being honest, I couldn't say I was actually a believer, you know, before finding Christ. You know what I mean? Like, I thought I was the main character. I thought everything was about me. You know what I mean? I wasn't even thinking about God. You know, I've seen the ugly and I've done the ugly. You know, how can God exist? You know, and so it was in the lowest point is where I found God in my life. You know, when all the guilt and all the anxiety and the constant having to look over my shoulder, you know what I mean? When I'm driving, you know, make sure my windows are tinted, you know. And all this is on the east side of Houston, you know, not in the Kingwood area, and it's all on the east side, you know. Yeah. And so in the lowest point of my life, whenever I was about to commit suicide, right, from all the stuff, and you know, I had no more hope. You know, I'm like, man, look at the road I'm going down. You know, I might as well just end it.
Yeah,
you know?
At the end of the road. Yeah. You don't find a way out.
Yep. And so I had a gun in my hand, and I was gonna take my own life, right? But in a desperation, you know, I'm not gonna lie, I was on my knees crying because I just wanted that pain to be away, the anxiousness, the depression. You know, I wanted all that just to be gone. And in a desperation, I called out to Jesus. And that's whenever I had my first supernatural encounter with him. I'll never forget that, man. It was like a love I've never felt before. And I could like physically feel him hug me, you know, and like in that moment, everything went away. In that moment, I laid the gun down and I just started weeping, but like out of love.
Yeah. Like you're free.
Yes.
You're free.
Yes.
All that pain, the weight, especially the weight.
Yeah.
The weight.
Bro,
the weight you carry. And it's a weight, man.
I felt truly forgiven, you know, like, and that's a crazy feeling to be truly forgiven, you know what I mean? And so what did I do after that? Did I immediately join a church? Nah. The next day I went clubbing. You know what I mean? So I had that encounter, but it marked me, but it didn't consume me. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And so it took me a lot of going back and forth.
Well, it gave you that reset because you felt forgiven.
Yeah.
So you started over. Like,
exactly.
Hey, yeah, I can start over. I was forgiven. So everything I've done, it's erased. And, okay. I'm not in trouble anymore.
Yeah.
Right?
You know,
basically.
I was taking advantage of grace.
Yeah, basically.
You know? But it wasn't until 2023, the beginning of 2023 is whenever I started taking a walk seriously. You know, I was like, man, I backslid again. You know, but I just had this hunger now. Like I set that mark. You know what I mean? There's this pastor, he says, if we call God an all-consuming fire, it's impossible to encounter him and it not leave a mark, right? Because when you touch a fire and you get burned, it leaves a scar.
Oh, yeah.
You know what I mean? And so that seed was already in me, right? He was just working in me and I didn't even know. You know, and so whenever the anxiety started creeping back up, the depression started creeping back up, you know, I was like, man, I'm missing something. Something in my heart that I'm missing. Like, I'm doing better now. Like, I want to say I'm a good person, but what does actually good mean? Mm-hmm. What does it mean to actually be good? You know? And so I started reading my Bible again. You know, it was the King James Version. I didn't understand a lick of what it was saying, but I was trying.
Yeah.
You know, I was trying.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, you have to really dissect it, man.
Yeah.
You know, the message is in there, but you have to break it down.
Yeah.
You have to understand it.
Mm-hmm.
You can't just read it. You're not going to get it.
Yeah, definitely not.
Yeah.
You know, and so all I know is I had a passion to tell people about what I was reading about Jesus. You know, and so I would preach to my coworkers and then we'll go clubbing afterwards. You know, and then it just hit me one day where I was like, man, like, what am I, like, I'm lukewarm. I'm a lukewarm person. Like, I'm going to hell. You know what I mean? And I remember that part because I was reading John. And I believe it's in John or Matthew where it says, many will come to me saying, Lord, Lord, have we not prophesied in your name? Have we not casted out demons in your name? And I will say to them, depart from me, for I never knew you, you who practice iniquity. You know, and that verse just hit me hard. I'm like, oh God.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Just because you're preached don't mean you're doing the right thing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You know, and so I just had this burning passion to actually get involved with the church that I was attending, even though I wasn't attending every week because I had to work on Sundays. The Sunday, and this is how God works. So I was going to quit that Sunday. I went up to my boss. I was like, hey, I had to put in my 2 weeks. And this was at 5 in the morning. And he was like, go ahead and take off. I was like, all right, bet. You know what I mean? So I hit the gym and I went to church that day. And I just told him, hey, I want to get involved. You know, I don't know what I'm good at, you know, this and that, you know. And so they placed me in the most awkwardest place, you know what I mean? Like, I was still very, like, kind of heart-hardened.
Yeah, you were learning.
Yeah, you know, they had me holding a sign that says welcome at the front door. Bro, I had the straightest face. I want to say I was probably mean mugging a little bit, you know?
You were second guessing, right?
Yes, I was like, man, this ain't for me, bro. Like, I'm just going to go back and tell them I need my job back, you know what I mean? But again, the Lord was still working in me, you know? And it's crazy because what God revealed to me that my calling is to be an evangelist, and that's what I do on the weekends. You know what I mean? And I mean, well, it's a lifestyle, but I have a ministry where we go on the weekends and evangelize. You know, and so I was already doing it before I even knew what evangelist meant, and that was to my coworkers.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? Even though I wasn't perfect, you know.
Well, you just wanted to, you just wanted everybody to feel what you felt.
Yes, 100%.
Yeah,
like, bro, if I could just explain, if I could just share how I felt, you know what I mean? Whenever I actually felt the love of God for the first time, bro, I was addicted to it.
Yeah, you wanted more.
I wanted more. You know?
Yeah, man, and that's why, you know, I really wanted you to come in here and say that, man, and it just gives a little bit of hope. Like I said, man, if you know, one person, 10 people, you know, 15 watch the video, you know, but one of them actually took it in,
for sure,
then you did your job, you know what I'm saying? And I did feel like this was like you have a really good story, dude, and you're only 24 years old, so it's like,
oh dang, that's
I see that, and then I'm like, man, at least he found it early, and maybe, I mean, obviously everything happens for a reason, but I feel that, you know, you got a long life ahead of you, so God did it early for you, so you have a lot of time to to touch as many as people as you can. You see what I'm saying? But you know, your story obviously is gonna give people that you know, that I wouldn't say hope, man, because I don't want to say that. I would say more like, just because you're in a certain situation don't mean you're not going to get out of it. You know, it doesn't mean that you're going to be there forever. Doesn't mean that you have to end with that, you know, or you got to continue that road.
Yeah.
You don't have to, man. And it doesn't matter what position you are in life. There's always a way out. And the way out is
through Jesus Christ. You know,
exactly.
One of my favorite verses is, it says, "Who the Son sets free is free indeed." You know, and I'm a firm believer in that. You know, if He could change my life, He could change everybody's life. You know what I mean? I've seen Him do so much miracles, and maybe, hopefully, a second time I can get on here and talk a little bit more about that. You know, like my experience walking with Christ.
Yeah, for sure. There's one, I don't know. Maybe you know where it's at, right? Because I read it every now and then. But there's, like you said, there's one that stuck with you, right, and hit you. There's one that stuck with me and hit me. I don't know if it's word for word, but it's what I remember. And this was when I was young, bro.
Yeah.
I read where it says, if you are doing right by God and you're living right, no matter what is going on in the world or what's coming, you're going to see it, but you're not going to feel it. So you're going to see everything that's going around you in the world, but if you're good with God and you're walking the straight path, you're going to see it and you're going to live it, but you're not going to feel it. And that stuck with me. You know, and maybe I'll do my homework and find out where it's at.
For sure.
And it's not in those exact words, but that's what it
what
it means, you know.
Yeah.
And you're going to see everything, but you're not going to feel it.
So,
you know.
So 2 verses came to mind whenever you said that. So one of them is, we walk by faith and not by sight, and the other one is the road to heaven is very narrow, but the road to hell is very broad.
Oh yeah.
Right.
Oh yeah.
So those are 2 verses that really stuck to me. You know.
Yeah.
But
yeah, man. I mean, I got Miguel on here, you know, and was really happy to have him on here. Just like the other videos I've done, we are at work. We are at our lunch.
We're on break time.
We're on break time, man. So we're gonna get him in when we can, and we will definitely have Miguel, you know, back on here for a second time, third, fourth, however many. You know, he would join us, but you know, and we can get into more of where Miguel's at now, and you know, how he's going, how his journey's going, and maybe he can educate us a little bit about, you know.
Oh man, I would love to do that. I love talking about the Bible, man.
Yeah. So we'll have to do another one specifically for that.
For sure.
For sure. So
if they want it, obviously, you know.
Yeah. But you know, we'll if they don't want it, they don't have to watch it. But we will do it.
For sure.
You know, we'll do it. So with that, man, I really appreciate Miguel for being here, and
thank you for having me.
Yes, sir, man, and appreciate your story. Your story, man, it was really good, and so, like I said, thank you again, and man, hopefully we'll have him back on soon, and we'll see y'all, man. So it's another episode with On the Mic with Tony, man, and we'll see you on the next one. Peace.